Welcome to Personal Mastery Training. I'm your host, Alvin Brown, former world class athlete turned entrepreneur and consultant. Join us as we learn from guests who have conquered their inner battles and share their journeys to success. Get ready for inspirational masterclasses and thought provoking strategy sessions to fuel your path to personal mastery. Let's dive in. Everybody, welcome to another episode of Personal Mastery Alliance. The Alliance is here, and I've got Dr. Charlie Cartwright and Raymond Janok Tanya. So, here's the deal. If you're new to us, again, I'm always going to say this because I assume not everyone's going to know what this podcast is about. Mastery training is about the idea of how can we master the inner game? Because if you can do this, if you can master your inner game, tell me what enemy would exist outside of you? Tell me if you wouldn't squash imposter syndrome. Tell me if you wouldn't increase your self-esteem. Tell me if you wouldn't love yourself even more if you mastered the inner game. So this is what this is about. This is about sharing ideas. We don't get on here, the three of us, we aren't on here telling you we've got it perfect. We're on here to help share some thoughts. We're thinkers. And we want to share thoughts with you. And we'd love it that you take away the thoughts, debate them, journal on them, whatever you want, as long as they get you to think. In today's world, no one wants to think as much anymore. We take sound bites and clickbaits and we run with them. How about doing some deeper thinking on concepts and thoughts? So we're going to suggest that. So one of us suggests an idea, and then we kind of chop it up. We elaborate. We call it soul food. One of us brings the main meal, and we all add to it. And by the time we're finished, the goal is that we give you something nice to chew on. So here's the topic of conversation today. Going along that lines, a lot of times we get on here and we talk about concepts and we give ideas, and it sounds like we've got it figured out, you know, but that's not the idea. A lot of times, because I've been doing this for years, talking about this, coaching people, giving them advice, I am here to listen and to give you the advice that I can't see. You can't see the frame of the picture you're in. So if you're in the picture, you can't see the frame. Everyone else can give you great advice, but you can't give yourself that own advice. That's my thing. So when I give advice, it sounds like I've got something perfect going on. I do not. I'm a work in progress, just like you, just like everyone else. So here's the idea. Today's conversation is about the space between stimulus, being stimulated, and the way you respond to that stimulus. So the space between stimulus and response, how wide is it for you? Is it that you get triggered in any relationship, by the way, personal, professional, in your business, everywhere, your sister, your brother, your whoever, your partner, something triggers you. Something they said, something they did, the look, the whatever it is. So you get triggered. How deep, how quick is your response? What's the space between? Because if that space is really short, you can get yourself in some serious trouble. You can get yourself in some serious trouble if the space is limited. What we're working on with training, personal mastery training, is increasing the space. Increasing the space. So you can have some time in here, that space that we increase is thinking time, right? That filtering time. So the response you give won't hurt you long term. Because sometimes that response that you release, there's venom in that. And that's where trouble happens. Because sometimes you can't undo things said or things done. You can't undo them. And then you got to pay for them. And sometimes it's not worth the price. So, not long ago, I'm coming out of a building, just recent, very recent. And this is twice now this stimulus happened to me, where this person blocked me in, knowingly that I needed to go, but purposely blocked me in. And I had a conversation with this person. Thought it was over. It wasn't. We didn't come up with an amicable because he was a very grumpy person. So I left. Second time he come back recently, he did it again. And now he's verbally aggressive. So now
Back in my day, because of my background, this was my space was very short, and there would be a response. And because one of my values too is respect, I respect you, you respect me, and everything's good. I would have responded in a certain way, very aggressively. I didn't though. I thought that space that I'm telling you about that I want us to work on. In that space, here's my conversations to myself. Well, Alvin, you're in your late 50s. You're You've built a business. You have four kids. You're respected in da da da. This is not right. This is in front of other people. Da 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 da. You may not mean it. I have a lot of conversation there that led to the response of, here's my response. Excuse me. All you had to do was ask me, and I would have gladly moved it. Uh, you just had to ask. And he went on about something. I said, listen, next time just ask me. All I gotta do is move it. You don't have to be like this. And I walked away. See, that wouldn't have happened. So, what I'm getting at is what I want you to realize is that this is not an idea of being perfect. This conversation we have every Sunday and every time we release these, it's not about you being perfect. It's about you putting the odds in your favor about achieving mastery over you, your thoughts, your feeling, and emotions. Because sometimes if I responded whichever way this would have went, first of all, it's very immature. If I would have responded to that, I'm 57, me rolling around on the ground or doing whatever, however it went, it's not a good look. And it's not a very, but human nature and old habits still play a part. They still play a part. You got to admit that. There's no magic. Those yogis we see that live in the mountaintops and can sit in Zen in a mountain, in a cave somewhere by themselves. Of course, you can sit in a Zen and control your own thoughts and do. That's not life. Life is about facing the the challenges, the instigation of something, the traffic, the boss, the coworker, the this, the that, someone, this person, and then dealing with it effectively. That's real life. That's what we're talking about. Real life things here. We're not talking about going hide in a cave or go to a workshop for 10 days and meditate away and say I've got it licked. No, it's about getting back into society and dealing with things effectively. So that's where I want to go with this conversation is real talk. How do we take this information and apply it in our life so we don't get stimulated and don't do things that we have to unwind if it's even unwindable. So with that, I'm going to pass the mic.
Excellent. Yeah, this is such an important topic for a multitude of reasons. Chiefly to your point, Alvin, if your response time is too short, you can get yourself in a lot of trouble. I remember a friend of mine saying one day here in the States that, said, Charlie, there are a lot of people in prison because they can't control their temper, right? And so it reminds me of this famous Viktor Frankl quote:
Right.
man's search for meaning. Between stimulus and response, there's a space. In that space is our power to choose our response. In our response lies our growth and our freedom.
Exactly.
So, to your point, increasing that space, but also the quality of the thoughts that are going on in that space between the stimulus and response. And, I've spoken before about growing up, my relationship with my grandfather, my mother's dad, and probably of all the things he taught me, those are gifts, all those lessons. The greatest gift he gave me was this wisdom about being in situations where you have to remain calm. He said, because if you don't remain calm, he said you lose your ability to think, right? And so he says you have to, when there's stress, when there's things going on, so you have to focus and remain calm, and then you'll be able to think and logically come up with the best solution. And so, in those situations, when they occur, my world, my first thought is to calm down, slow my breathing, and it slows everything down. And when you do that over time, it becomes a habit. And that's one of the greatest habits that you can develop as a human being. Then you're thinking through your choices. I can reply, I can walk away. You're thinking about all these things, and then you'll come up with the best answer, the best solution, and follow that. And sometimes the best solution is to walk away, right? And so, but we've got to really develop that recognition that this is a stressful time, whatever the situation is happening, and now I need to I need to calm down, right? And then assess the situation and make the best choice. Okay. And that's the amazing thing also about our brains. Our brains are very trainable. We're training them every day, whether we realize we are or not. When we make this a practice, it'll become a habit. And the beautiful things about habits is that they can manifest themselves without the need for conscious thought. So we will automatically calm down and assess over time, but it does take practice. And there's no shortcut to this. And another point there, Alvin, is that regardless of our education, regardless of our level of personal mastery, it's still a journey. And the only way to become proficient at this is to go through it, meaning you're going to go through stressful situations and then have choices of how you're going to handle those. And the more stressful situations you go through and handle successfully, the better you're going to be at it. But there's no way to become proficient at it without going through it. And guess what? It doesn't matter where you're born, who you are, part of your humanity and part of your existence on this planet is you all have a healthy dose, we all get a healthy dose of these situations that we might not necessarily ask for, but they're thrust upon us, and then it's up to us to decide how we will respond. With that, I'll pass the mic.
Calm is a superpower, right? And there's this wisdom that I love. I always like to remind myself of it. It says that the greatest warriors are the ones who are never angry. Yeah. Those are the greatest warriors. The cool thing about personal mastery, as I think about it, is we're almost walking through different worlds. Okay, it gives you this power, literally, to walk between different worlds. Where we have the world that we live in right now, and in this world, there are many other people. There are many situations that can trigger us. There can be chaos. There can be a lot of things. Okay, and as we face those things, which, as Charlie says, when we train ourselves, okay, when we train ourselves for a brief moment, we're able to walk into a different world where we can find more peace, where we can be conscious, and where we can make the right decisions and ultimately train ourselves to make those decisions more consistently, regardless of what's on the outside. Yes, it is still a journey, yet it is still a challenge, and we never arrive. We never arrive. And maybe that's also the how can I say it? The nature of personal mastery is we tend to think that we'll ultimately get to a destination, when really personal mastery, in my opinion, it's about becoming more than arriving. Okay, so as I'm faced with this chaos, I'm faced with this bully or whoever it is, for a brief moment I've trained myself to step into a different world. Okay, for myself, where I can have wisdom, where I can see things for what they are, and where I can pause, breathe, and make the right decision for what's next. And okay, I step back in. Okay, I step back in now, and I get to do what's necessary, do what's been done. Uh, There's a movie. It came out a while ago, a few years back. It was called After Earth. I don't know if you guys ever saw this movie. Yeah, it's with Will Smith and his son, right? And I believe the father was this great warrior, and the son was this green kid who's never really been to battle, and he was in a situation where his father couldn't help him. It was all about him. He was stranded in his planet where they had all these things trying to kill him, and his father had to kind of walk him through a microphone of what he had to do, but he had to do it on his own. And the main instructions that his father would tell him every time, okay, when he would get really, really stressed and just couldn't think, he would say, take a knee, look, breathe, okay? That was the instructions. So just by taking a knee, looking around, okay, so now you don't see anything, you're blind, but just look around and breathe, okay? You regain control, you get to think, okay? You get to think, you get to see things for what they are. So it's kind of the same things. It's what personal mastery is teaching us. Okay, where instead of just being reactive and completely unconscious, okay, reactive and completely unconscious, well, layer by layer by layer, we add experiences, we add thought, we add certain things to our whole organism, to our mind, to our soul, in a way that when the moment comes, we naturally do what's necessary. Okay. And we won't be perfect at it. We still have to grow, we still have to learn. Leadership is hard. Personal mastery is not an easy thing, but that's how it's developed. Okay, so that was my concept of stepping into a different world for that one moment. That's what it looks like. I'll give another example also of that gap. Okay, because that gap is where power is, in my opinion. True power is in the gap. I'll give you guys a good example. I'm an archer. Okay, I'm an archer, and my bow, just by itself, nothing's happening to it. But then I'm faced with tension right now. So what happens? I start to pull back. So the tension really builds. Okay, the tension builds, the tension builds. But if I'm not in control, if I'm not focused, this arrow can go anywhere. But now, when I get to that pause, okay, that pause moment, it's where I get to breathe, it's where I get to aim, and then I can release exactly where it needs to go. But and I can bring home food back home for my family or whatever. Okay, but it's because I took the pause. Without the pause, it's not the same. Without the pause, it's just complete chaos. It goes in every direction. I believe tension will always be there in this world. It will come, as we know, but then are the people who are trained to find power in the pause, and there are the people who are afraid of the pause, who try to do absolutely everything that they can to not be in that moment. Okay, so with that, I'll pass the mic.
Powerful, powerful conversations, and brought me to a few thoughts where Dr. Charlie brought up the idea of Viktor Frankl quote exactly where the stimulation for that. I kept that in my mind. His wisdom. Kept that in my mind for the space between stimulus and response. Perfect. And habits. Habits is everything. Because as I said back in the day, I used to watch my the people who influenced me. My brother, my family. We're from Jamaica originally. For those who don't know, and we had a quick response. Well, they did, and I learned that response, that quick trigger response. So these things can be, and they're not necessary. They're just habits that you built up because we have I call it a checklist. When you get out of the woman in your culture, your family, whatever, your family is your culture sometimes, most times. There's ways to respond to things. So if you grew up seeing money problems, let's say, and when there's money problems, it's talks about there's not enough of it, there's this, there's that, or they react in anger or something. We start, that's our habits. We start to think that's the way it is. If you grew up in a relationship where there was abuse, your father, your whoever it is, let's take typically a male, would respond with violence. Your checklist then is if my partner responds to me in a certain way, or I get upset with my partner, I go down my checklist of ways to handle it. Well, I'll just hit him. That's the way it used to be done. That's my checklist. Check, hit them. Or you have a few things on your checklist, which is to talk it out, walk away. There's a different checklist we have. So we have habits that we respond from things we've seen, things we've grown up seeing, and so on. Regardless, and Dr. Charlie talked about regardless of education. Yeah. Have you seen? I remember Mike Tyson talking about this. He said Jamie Foxx, I think, was talking to Mike Tyson about because Jamie used to hang out with Mike, and he says when he would show up at Mike's apartment, he'd see people coming out of there, out of his apartment, that are business people, women that are executives, and they're coming out, and he's going, "What are you doing?" In Mike Tyson's face, they love that bad boy. They love the bad boy, so they would come out of there. So my point is this: have you seen really, really smart people? And I have a few clients who were doctors, psychologists, and I remember the doctor saying to me, "Oh, my wife and his daughter are psychologists," and he said they're crazy. He said I live with them; they're crazy. So again, does education matter? No, because here's why I bring this up. When we get in a deep emotional, engrossing emotions, the you have the conscious prefrontal cortex that's all about decision making, and then you have the lower brain which responds to emotions, the reptilian brain, the emotional brain. It responds, and its job is to respond to emotions, to things that are stimulating and it doesn't have time to think. That's why you need those two separate brains. You need a reaction brain and you need a thinking brain. What we're talking about is working on that thinking brain, developing that one even more because that's fairly new in in development. The old brain was there. Think about this for a second. If we go back in time to the prehistoric days, it was reactionary because out there was not all this comforts that we have today. It was a rough world, so you had to react. So that brain was the number one. Its reaction is fight, flight, find food, procreation. That's what it did. And then eventually, over time, as the neuroscience goes, we develop cortices and now we have empathy and we have to start thinking about these things. And anyways, my point is this: education doesn't matter. That's coming from the prefrontal. That's coming from the logical brain. When we get, I love this wisdom that says, fatigue makes cowards of us all. That means when we get fatigued, tired, hungry, depleted in some way, we default to the emotional brain because the prefrontal gets knocked out when we get angry, which is why boxers love to get you angry. They love to get in your emotions because when you get angry, all those thoughts, all those preparation time that you did planning for them, they've studied all my moves, you've done everything, but I got you angry. Now you don't. Now you want to kill me. Now you just want to end me, and now you're not thinking anymore. See, so this is where that, as Ray said, the greatest warriors are the ones who are never angry. They're intentional. They never get out of their zone. All right, so it doesn't matter your education. Emotional react. What we're talking about here is working on with personal mastery. And I went to this conversation because I'm on here doing this podcast. I'm helping my clients for years, and I'm looking like I have it all together. But I'm a work in progress, just like you. But I'm working harder than you, maybe. So I made a lot of great decisions. But I'm still tempted the same way you are. I'm still triggered the same way you are. But I made a lot of great decisions that increased my space between stimulus and response. It's no different than, let's say, I go back to martial arts. When I first started learning martial arts, we did katas and we did forms and okay, you put your hand on. This is how we're gonna block, and this is how we're gonna. do this, and it's all set. But give me your right hand, and I'm gonna block the right hand. But when you go to the streets, no one's gonna follow form. They're gonna tackle you. They're gonna do. So there's nothing like putting things into play. That's what I'm telling you about this idea of going to retreats and mountaintops, and you come back zenned out, thinking you've got it figured out. You don't. Go to these mountaintops, learn the techniques, and come back and go into real life where someone does cut you off, someone does trigger you, someone does give you that look, someone does is condescending to you or disrespects your values, and let's see what you're made of. Right? That's enough of the kata, enough of the right hand block, perfect punch. Oh no, no. This is about dealing with life. So emotions. When we get upset, the blood goes away from the prefrontal cortex, nice and calm. That's why it's nice to be calm and under pressure because blood flow then stays where in your prefrontal. And now you're able to think things out. When we get angry, shut off. It goes emergency, boom. Let's shunt off to the prefrontal. Let's shove it down to the emotional brain and start acting. And that's where we start to act. And next thing you know, we wake up out of this emotional road rage and we are either arrested, we have said something we didn't want to say, we're either harmed or hurt, we either, and time has been wasted. You put yourself in danger. So I'm about let's work on that prefrontal, let's work on that calm, let's use our logical brain to think our way out of this situation. Remember, this doesn't have to be about an altercation in outside. This could be at your home with your kids that you say something that you didn't because you were angry, you were triggered. This is about having that ability to make the right decision in the right moment. This is about getting that moving from kata to real life. How can you get that real life? Right? So, um, and Ray said the gap is where the power lies. Yes. That gap we talk about, that quiet space between the quiet between the music, that's where the real magic happens, right? Is the space between the bars of the music. And this is the same thing, the space between stimulus and response. That's the magic. That's where that quiet spot is where it's a beautiful space to be. And I'm gonna say let's start building that up. Let's start working that. So with that, I'll pass the mic.
I had an opportunity to work on this myself. On Friday, I was out running some errands, and it was close to dinner time, and I said, there's a Cane's Chicken not too far from my house, and I was over in that direction. Do you have Cane's in Canada?
No, we don't. We have the bigger ones, the Popeyes and the KFCs and yeah.
Yeah. So Cane's is good, and so I pull in the line, and there's two drive through windows where you can order, right? The machine,
Yeah.
but there's only one lane, and then it doesn't until you turn to get to where you order, then the lanes bifurcate, okay?
Mhm.
So, and there's just lines, so it's an honor system. So I can see up ahead that there's a space for a car to get up there, but I'm just waiting for the car in front of me to either take the first stall or go around to the second stall. And I see a car comes up behind me, and they go around and they jump in there.
That's
And
it.
then they sit there for a second and they come back around and get behind me. So I was like, okay, that's good. So then now it's getting close for my time to get up there. And I think, you know what, that second spot's going to open up. And as soon as this car pulls forward a little bit more, their bumper's hanging out, I can just go because I'm staying inside the lines. Well, this car behind me jumps around, gets up there. That really frustrated me. So now I have my stimulus. So now I have this host of responses that I cycled through. I was like, okay, I can make a profane statement here. I can roll the windows down so that
Mm-hmm.
they can hear my profane statement. I can make a profane hand gesture here, or I can throw the car in park and get out and walk up there and tap on their window.
Right.
These were the things
Checklist.
that
The
ran through
checklist.
those are the first things that came through my mind, okay?
Yep.
Then right? I'm trying to stay in the executive portion of my brain to say, you know what? They're impatient, and that was a selfish act, and that's not who I am. So I'm gonna. So I end up in line right behind them. So now I'm in the rearview mirror. They know what they did. I know what they did. And but again, I'm not gonna, have my mouth moving or anything like that. I'm just relaxing, breathing. Okay, I get my food 2 minutes later. I've got time. I'm not in a hurry, right? So I'm looking at my email, looking at my text messages. I was, Saturday was my birthday, and so Friday I'm getting early, birthday well wishes. So I'm responding, right? I'm using the time wisely. So finally get up to the window. She says, "Oh, you had the three-piece," and I was like, "Hey, yes, ma'am." It's like, "Here you go." And I'm like, I go to hand my money. She says, "Nope, the car in front of you paid."
No.
Paid for your meal.
No.
So I was like, if I had said something,
Bingo.
if my mouth had been moving, if I made a hand gesture or I got out of the car, none of those would have ended positively. And they definitely probably wouldn't have paid for my meal, right?
Hmm.
And so I'm like, this is nice. And it's kind of like when someone cooks for you, the food tastes a little better. When someone buys your meal, it tastes a
Hmm.
little better.
Hmm.
And it tasted really good because I won that battle in my
Bingo.
mind,
Bingo.
right?
Bingo.
They
That's
knew they
perfect.
did. They knew they did. They knew they did the wrong thing,
Yeah.
and picked up the tab, and I was like, "We're good." We're
Really good.
good. And so it's not always. A lot of times, as human beings, we're like, "Oh, they got away with something, or they disrespected me, and I didn't stand up for myself." It's not about that. Um, when you make the right choice, it's about standing up for your well-being and the well-being of others, right? Because it's in that person's best interest that I don't elevate and escalate and all that as well as mine, right? So it's a two-way street there, and then that outcome is very positive. So you never know. And then the people around, I'm sure people witnessed that and they saw. And so that's another positive ripple that we put into the world. And we all know that you need more positive ripples going out into the world to create that butterfly effect. So with that, I'll pass the mic.
It's beautiful. That's it.
This particular subject, as I do every single week, but this one is kind of the story of my life. Okay, it really is, because I was a very uh, react reactive and
Hmm.
angry kid. Okay, very reactive, angry kid, and spiteful. Is that how you say it? Like, I would
That makes
remember stuff.
sense. Yeah.
I would
Yep.
remember stuff and just wait,
Hmm.
wait for the right moment. So
Hmm.
I'm grateful to my parents because at a very early age, at a very young age, they both challenged me with this in different ways. Okay, in different ways. Where my father, the way he approached it is that I would get so angry and I would just charge him. I would literally try to fight him. Okay, and he would laugh. He would laugh. He would just hold me by my head, laugh, give me a little judo sweep. I would fall on the ground and just laugh, And I couldn't do nothing until I was like so tired, and he just would remind me, you can either get angry or you get better. Okay, get better at expressing your emotions, understanding how you feel, this, that. But he would simply dismiss it completely and let me know this isn't doing anything. This isn't going nowhere. Where my mother, she would like conversations with me. And why I believe in this so much is because your nature is still your nature, but with years of being faced with that and understanding that people do transform, people do transform, because I know that's in my nature, but by default, more often than not, there are still these moments where I revert back to this, but more often than not, my baseline is to pause. My baseline is to think. So it's very possible. And why I'm saying this is just because when you're driven by ego and emotions, you forget everything. Okay. You forget absolutely everything. But when you're guided by truth, by awareness, by presence, there you find your power. Okay. So if we can be guided by the right things instead of just driven by the wrong things, everything changes. Everything changes there. So presence, just being here, is really regaining consciousness in one way. Okay. It's not necessarily having the answer. It's just realizing, okay, I'm running in every direction. Do I have to run in every direction? I don't think so. Let me just be here. Okay. So now you get to see things for what they are. Now you get to become more aware, and just through that, I find there's a different type of intelligence, a different type of wisdom that you can tap into. You can find truth. Okay. You can find truth. And sometimes it's just by looking at yourself in the mirror. Okay, I'm wrong. Am I really mad, or is it my ego talking right now? I just don't like that this person said this because it reminded me this about myself. It's not what they said, it's what I believe about myself. Okay? So now it's a different conversation. And now you gain power because you even realize, hey, if I don't want to be mad, I'm not mad. Like literally, if I decide that I'm not mad, I'm not mad. And I can actually decide that. I do have the power to decide that. Okay, so I can control me. I can't control the world, but I can control me. That's for sure. Okay, so I was just reminded of these years and these long hours, and guys, I was in the situation. We all have our upbringing, but me, I just remember coming from Cameroon, new country, new place. I was just angry. I didn't know why. Maybe because we left everything behind, and I was in this neighborhood where it was rough. You're walking back home from school. You have kids waiting for you to try to get into fights with you, literally, because you're from the wrong school. So that's kind of how we grew up. So I was just used to reacting, 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 and then that wasn't serving me. So big shout out to my parents for the great work that they've done there to kind of put me on that path at a very young age. Now I'll give my first sports analogy also of the day, and I know both of you guys will understand. Um, I remember playing in big stadiums. Okay, you walk in and you see the crowd, and it can be a bit intimidating. It's a thrill. There's a lot of things going on, but when you're playing the game and you're super focused in the game, it's like you don't hear anything. It's like there isn't even a crowd. For those couple seconds, man, I hear myself breathing. I hear people moving around me. I don't hear the crowd. I don't see the crowd. It's like time stops. Literally, time stops for that little moment, and you do things that you didn't even know you were capable of, but you were trained to do these things. And now it's just a moment for them to unleash and happen. So that gap is kind of the same thing where you hear all the noise, and if you step in there, the noise just disappears. When you go back to presence just for the little brief moment, the noise disappears. There's peace there. Okay, there's peace there. And I believe whenever we're in a state of peace, we can do anything. Okay, we can do anything just from that one moment of peace. So whether you have sports in your life, okay, whether you have whatever it is, okay, that you're passionate about, I think it's a great thing to intentionally put yourself in situations every day or as much as possible where you can face that and develop that and step into that gap, whether it's like Alvin going to the gym, okay? And hey, it's a tough leg day today and you don't want to do it. Okay, you don't want to do it. Where when you get to certain reps, certain sets, then you have to find that presence, that awareness, and tap into that power to get things done. And the more you do that, it's training, really. It transfers to everything else. Maybe that's one thing is that because our brains are so efficient and want to keep us away from any type of challenge, right? They want to keep us comfortable as much as possible. We also lose this opportunity to be guided by presence and truth and awareness. We stay in that reptilian brain, because that's where comfort is. That's where the easy see ball, go to ball decisions happen. You forget the actual game plan of why you're doing this. Okay. It's a different level of thinking and seeing things. So, yeah, whatever it is, it's a good thing to find something to challenge us intentionally in a safe environment so that when life comes knocking at the door, because it always does, um, we're not only that we're prepared for it, but we understand ourselves. We continually keep becoming. Okay. We keep becoming. And that's what I love about this subject. And honestly, I raise my hand because I'm truly a living testimony to that. Because even at work, even in different situations, people often tell me, like, Raymond, when we talk to you, we can see that you're really listening. I mean, like, deeply listening. You're not just reacting to stuff. Well, in my nature, I was the complete opposite, but it was years and years and years, and it still comes out. It's not perfect, but it's because I understand and we understand that we have to work at it continually. You never arrive, you know. So with
Amen.
that, I'll pass the mic.
And I will I want to close it out with this reminder. Ray touched on it, and it's so funny that each of us in our upbringing have been teased towards reaction, the checklist, right? The checklist, as Charlie was pointing out, at that drive-through, he went through a checklist, and it's quick. It's a quick checklist. It's not like a whole minutes here. This is like quick. I could react. No, I'm I have to remember that if I do, and one of the things I got to think about, he has to think about is, I get out of this car, I'm becoming a known person in the area and in my business. Can you imagine it's a loose situation, so it's his best interest to go through the checklist. However, old habits, old reaction times. Remember, we don't think if it's a space. You've seen it in celebrities. They've ruined their whole career because that space between stimulus and response was so small. They've ruined their own career by saying things when they shouldn't have said it, and just by pure habits. So that's one point I wanted to make, is that we all go through a checklist. That's that checklist, and we have to start to clean up that checklist a little bit. It worked. Maybe it worked. In the past. It doesn't work now. Is it still relevant having that checklist? That negative checklist. And the other thing I want to point out to end off our conversation is this. Ray brought up the idea of putting yourself in positions, in situations. By the way, we don't even have to go and find these situations, by the way. I think every day we're faced with them. Again, whether it be your kids, you don't even have to go and find other. The Dr. Charles is gonna go order food. You're always being challenged with these, and it's to lean into them, and see that instance, Dr. Charlie's um, example on Friday. That decision he made is now in reinforced and moved him further into growing this space, because that example enabled him to widen the space again, because it's proof that the space works, and he's going to keep on widening. So he's actually moved his space a little bit more, and we all have in some way. So here's the thing I'm going to finish with here. In the brain, neuroscience wise, there's a part of the brain, I remember this, talking about willpower and building this idea of how do we build willpower, the willpower to resist these pokes, these stimulus. Well, the more we resist them, there's a part in the prefrontal cortex called the medial prefrontal cortex and anterior cingulate cortex, ACC, MPFC, these spaces in between. I'm not a neuroscience guy, but I love dabbling in there. So the more we face challenges, we build up this gray matter in this area, and it gets easier then to start. So face these challenges, get out of the gym and stop doing the forms where someone has to do this perfectly and block you and give me your right. No, not your left, your right. It doesn't happen that way. Get out of the gym and get into society. Get out of the cave in the Buddhist mountaintop where you're quiet and everything's controlled. Get into life and start to really lean into challenges. That office, that coworker. See if you can handle them today. That difficult client, that difficult boss, your brother, your sister who triggers you, who knows your buttons. Don't don't resist them. Lean into it. Challenge yourself. Let's see if we can do this. Let's see if we can grow. Because the world is not that perfect place as we know. It is perfect, but it's not the perfect place that you want it to be. You're gonna get challenged. And that's the only way we grow. So with that, I pass the mic for the last word. And Dr. Chai, if you have any last words to put in, Ray, I think we cooked this meal up pretty good.
Absolutely. So I think the word that I'm going to take away from this week is pause, right? Just pause, the power of pause. And when we pause, we help create a larger space so that we can respond appropriately to the stimulus. That I pass the mic.
Mm.
Amen.
That's the one I wanted to use, Charlie. Beat me there. Uh,
Mhm.
I'll go with just this concept of the archer I was uh, talking about before. Man, let's become skilled archers in just knowing exactly how to breathe, look, and just release that tension. Just don't keep it built up so everything breaks. At some point, you have to release it, but release it with precision, you know, by pausing and, yeah, choosing the right things.
I'm gonna say the word is practice. Practice. And that idea is, remember, we're always in training. Find reasons, find opportunities to practice
Yeah.
widening the space. Go to that difficult coworker. Uh, that guy, when I see him again, there won't be a third time. I will now park in the right spot. I will avoid him at all costs. And yeah, I just won't have a conversation with him because I'll let him be and have his way and have his life. Because I've already said what I need to say twice, and it's not going to serve anything. So take reasons to practice being quiet. Practice, maybe even now, maybe it's a big stretch. Maybe I'll even be nice to him. Whoa. Anyways, no promises there. But all right. So that's it for that episode. All right. So great input, everybody. And I hope this helps those who are listening to build up that space. I want you to ask yourself if you're triggered, if the stimulus triggers you so much, what's underlying? Ego? Did they compromise one of your values? Or is this a habit, a reactionary habit? So think about that. All right. So with that, brothers, you know what we say? What do you wish everybody in this case, definitely a lot of peace. We're gonna send you love
Love.
and
And so,
sprinkle
oh, okay.
soul.
You got the
Hey,
hearts, the heart action going on.
hey,
Nice.
of course, man. The next level. All right, everybody.
Cool.
Until next time, we'll see you. Like, subscribe, and share. All right.